pebeo drawing gum was applied to the watercolor paper to protect the highlights of the painting. First layer. My palette consists of yellow ochre, hansa yellow, neutral tint, ultramarine blue, pyroll red. These are the colors that I use throughout the painting. Watery for light and thicker for dark. A watery mix of yellow ochre was applied to the rock sections to the left and behind the donkeys, varying colors, adding burnt sienna light for shading. We are going to work on the donkeys. The first layer is a very watery mix of the colors that I see in the reference photo, taken by Gary Odell, posted on Facebook under the group Free Reference Animal Images for Artists. For the gray, I use a very watery mix of neutral tint for the undercoating of the brown. I use yellow ochre, burnt sienna, light, with a dash of ultramarine blue to dull the brightness. By using a watery mix, the undercoat of the fur for the donkey is very smooth and will shine through on the darker layers that will be applied in the future. The nostrils are painted with a thicker consistency of neutral tint and darkened with ivory black. I start with the darkest donkey, the second from the left, just to give the painting a reference point of where to take all the colors for the other donkeys. I am mindful of the form of the faces, the direction of the fur, the darkness of the fur, the shapes that I see within the fur. The eyes of the donkey are facing towards the water, away from the lights. There is not a lot of reflection in the eyes. They are very dark, but I try and leave a little highlight just so you can see where they are looking, and it adds character to the donkey. Once the darkest donkey is layered with the dark colors, it sets the tone for the rest of the painting, and I can work on the second layer of each of the other animals. The darkest part of the face are the eyes and the nostrils and mane running along each of the donkey's back and the edge of the ears, which are painted with neutral tint for the darkest areas and a mix of burnt sienna light with ultramarine blue to the reddish areas of each ear. When the eyes are painted in, I remove the pebeo drawing gum so I can soften the edges where the white highlights are. For the second layer of the rocks, I am just shading in areas where I see where the edges of the rocks are and the shadows are from where the rocks are sitting behind each other. I add a yellow and green color to the front of the rocks where I see moss. The layer is soft, watery, and flowing, and I add salt to the edges to give the rock a rough finish. For the third layer, going back to the donkeys, I just add some more details to the ears, the fur, the faces, trying to correct shapes of their cheekbones and jaws. Do any color corrections, highlighting, darkening, and detailing. For this stage of the painting, you want to go back and forth from your painting to the reference photo, just filling in the details, adjusting tonal range of your colors, correcting forms and shapes. Each donkey in the reference photo has its own character, and I want to bring it to life. They are colored differently from each other. Their ears are pointed a little different. Their stance is a little bit different. So I want to make sure that I capture that. In the little details of the rocks, that you can see between the heads. I want to make sure I address those. I start with yellow ochre wash, and then I add gray and shadows where the rocks are overlaying each other, and I darken each layer. It's important to let each layer dry before you add the next layer. Each layer will sit on top of each other if the previous layer is completely and fully dry. The ear and the muzzles are finely detailed with a light ultramarine blue or a neutral tint, or just a lighter version of the color that's in the fur, to bring out the details in the ears and the muzzle. They are not just plain white. There is shadows, there are little divots, there are dimples, so it's nice to give the faces the detail that you see from the reference photo. The brushes I use are round brushes, calligraphy brushes. I received a watercolor pen from my daughter for Christmas, which I enjoy. These are the types of brushes that I like to use, of different sizes. I use a big flat brush to do a watery mix to wet the water, and then I use smaller brushes to fill in the colors of the shadows on the reflections that I see in the water, which gives it a realistic appeal, very impressionistic. I go back over the rocks again with a nice watery wash with some finer details. I add salt to it so that it collects and gives the rocks an interesting surface, more realistic approach. At this stage, I'm giving the rocks an edge and paying closer attention so they look more finished, polishing up the details that I might have left undone. Smoothing fur, giving more details, adding more creases. This is the stage of the painting where you just want to follow through and darken the darks. It's very rewarding, this stage. It's a more finished, polished look. I am now removing the drying gum from the water, and now you can see the highlights in the water reflection. Very beautiful. Now you use a fine brush and just detail and do some finer details. The tape is removed from the edges. Now we present the painting. It was a joy to paint, and I hope you enjoyed watching this. Thank you.